Broadcasting live and worldwide. Here's Brody Brazil.
So I've been putting out Sharks YouTube videos and podcasts pretty much all season long, and I'm quite positive this is going to be the last one of this regular season, 2018 into 2019, because there's only 1 week left on the schedule. Crazy as that sounds, 3 contests still to play for San Jose, 2 on the road, just 1 more at home, and then they are guaranteed to be in the postseason, and with the 2 spot in the Pacific Division, they will have home ice advantage in round 1. But as I said, I want to break some things down here, and there's only 3 games left. Let's begin with that as topic number 1. What do these 3 games even mean for the Sharks? I mean, like I said, you've already got your fate sealed. You know where you're going to stand. You pretty much know who you're going to play. You know where that series is even going to start. So with the regular season games that, like I said, don't mean a ton to you, maybe individuals want to get to certain milestones. I understand that. As a team, though, you really still want the opportunity to go into the postseason playing well. You need to regain some confidence, I think, just because of losing 7 in a row recently. Yes, snapping out of that was nice over the weekend here, but there's still some after effects of that skid that you want to get as right as possible in what remains. I can also tell you a thing that you're definitely focused on is avoiding getting hurt. Now, you can't play different or more conservative. That might lead to something you didn't want as well. You got to play the same way, but you have to be mindful of keeping everybody as healthy as possible in these final 3 games. And that brings up the potential of Pete DeBoer maybe giving some of his regulars rest. And I'm not even talking about guys with nagging injuries. I'm talking about guys who just log a ton of minutes on a regular basis, maybe even a Brent Burns or a Joe Thornton. And I know those guys are unlikely to be willing to sit out if they're perfectly healthy to play, but maybe here as we get to later portions of the season, maybe they'll see the side of playing it safe, playing it smart, trying to get that extra couple days in there to let the body recuperate before the second season begins. And I really do think you have to look at the postseason as the idea that you're going to play 20-plus playoff games and go all the way through the Stanley Cup final and win it. You have to have that in your mindset in terms of your preparation. And I'll get to the Pavelski and the Karlsson injury situations next and how that relates to the 20-something game plan. But, you know, as for the whole team, you really have to plot it out as if you're going to, have a quarter season left at this juncture right here with just 3 left on the calendar. So that's the mindset. And then the last thing here is actually the last game on the schedule for San Jose. It's against the Avs, who very much in that game 82 could be playing for their postseason fate. And that's going to be a weird one for the Sharks. Nothing for them really to come out of that game, but going up against a team that is all or nothing, win or go home for the Avs, potentially on that final Saturday at SAP Center. So an interesting final week, an interesting final couple games for this team in terms of how they approach it, what it means to them, how they get through this, and hopefully in the healthiest fashion possible. Speaking of health, here's my number 2 topic, the status of Karlsson and Pavelski. Now, like I said, you have to approach all of this as if the Sharks are definitely going to play 20-something more games in the second season, because you don't want either of these guys to come back, retweak something again, and then have to miss more games. We've already seen that Karlsson did that, tried to come back, retweaked it, and has been out since even longer. So there is concern and caution, I think, for both these players. I'm not here to state the facts one way or another, or that I know what is or isn't going to happen. It doesn't sound likely that Erik Karlsson is going to be returning before the postseason. It could happen, and I hope it does. By the way, the reason I hope it does is so that he can shake some of the rust off, so that he can get at least a regular season game back under his belt. It's been a while before the intensity gets ratcheted up a notch in the playoffs. I think that would do him and the team a lot of good just to get another one under his belt, test it out a little bit, test the waters. Because for as much as we know, no practice situation can truly replicate an NHL game situation, that conversation is usually meant for the regular season. No practice session can definitely replicate what an NHL playoff game is like in terms of the intensity. On the other hand, it does sound like Joe Pavelski has been getting awfully close to returning. And I'm wondering now that if he's really at this close point, if the reason he hasn't been playing is because the Sharks, essentially, like I said before, they know their fate, they know their opponent, they know where this series is going to start and who gets home ice. So I feel like maybe Pavelski is going to get the last game or two, maybe even 3 under his belt so that he can feel right going into the second season. I also want to point out this. We're all hoping to get obviously more than the presence of Karlsson and Pavelski in the second season. What do I mean by that? We've seen other Sharks in playoffs prior come back from a respective injury and be there and just not produce or play to the bar that they have previously set. And then we always find out after the fact the real reason is, like, let's use Joe Thornton in the early 2010s. Came back in that series against Vancouver. Yeah, well, he had a separated shoulder. That's why he wasn't able to look like the same Jumbo you've come to know and love. And so I think that we really have to guard against that possibility that Karlsson and Pavelski, they both might return for the playoffs. It sounds like that's, what they've been aiming for, and it sounds like that's very much on the table. But we don't know, and I don't know if they even know if they'll truly be at 100% or, let's be realistic, nobody's at 100% at this time of year, even if they're at 85% or 80% or maybe some other lower percentage of how they're feeling. But I think what you have to guard against is the difference between their presence and their contributions due to how healthy they really are or aren't. I want to get to number 3 now that the month of March is over. We can take a look back and fortunately be happy from a superstitious standpoint that this month is over, because the second half of it was not very good to Team Teal. And I'll get into what I think, the causes were there, the root causes of these struggles in my next topic. But as for the team aspect versus the individual aspect, I truly think there were a couple players who really stood out even during the Sharks' roughest patches. And 2 of those players are Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, which is great because you're largely relying on those 2 individuals to be part of your next generation and your next step in San Jose. But I think a lot of people are agreeing that Hertl, especially his play with the puck, looks extremely confident when he has it, whether he's finishing with a goal or assisting to somebody else. Hertl as a centerman, it's been a career season. It's been a transitional season for him as he slid into a new role and really thrived in it. Everybody's excited about number 48. And how about for Timo Meier? Last year, it was to get to the 20-plus goal mark, which he did. That was quite a milestone. And now this year, he's added or he's enhanced the physical element of his game, had 10 hits the other night against Las Vegas, and now he, too, is at the 30-goal mark this season. So congratulations to Hertl and Timo Meier on taking huge steps forward, respectively. Getting to my next point here, just trying to put together what happened in this month of March for the Sharks. And really, it was a majority of this calendar month that they struggled. Clearly, their defense went in another rut. I've said this before. I've said it quite a bit, actually. It's amazing that the Sharks are opposite of most NHL teams. They struggle offensively. They go into scoring slumps. Getting off the schneid is a big deal, usually in the NHL, because you can't bury pucks and light the lamp. For the Sharks, it seems like they go in defensive ruts. They also go on streaks of defensive brilliance. I mean, you could look at 3 or 4 different stretches this season where they went allowing 2 or fewer 5 times in a row. I think once like 6 out of 7 games. I mean, they've gone on some tremendous defensive streaks, and largely they win all those games. Still undefeated, by the way, this season when they allow 2 goals or fewer in a game. But clearly, in this second half of March, they got away from that. And also something that I don't think was discussed enough, their offense really started to slow down as well. Because as they've been giving up a lot of 4s and 5s, definitely not 2s or fewer, They also haven't been scoring a ton. I mean, they're getting 2s and the occasional 3s and maybe sometimes a 4 in there. So the Sharks' scoring has really seemed to go away simultaneously as they've gone in a defensive slump. It's been both sides of the puck here that's been contributing to the losing ways in having dropped 7 of their last 8, but still with a little bit of time to try and turn it around. My next point here is to think of what the playoffs could bring for San Jose in terms of the level of difficulty. In just a second, I want to take you through what winning the Stanley Cup would mean. Would mean you'd have to go through just to get to round 4 and to win round 4. It sounds daunting. It sounds intimidating, and I'll get to that in just a second. But first, just think about the first round matchup with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. 14 times San Jose has met the team from Southern Nevada in regular and postseason games, right? In these last 2 years. Of those 14 games, 7 times Las Vegas has scored a goal against the Sharks within the first 5 minutes. That stat coming from Kevin Kurz of The Athletic. That is telling. That is dangerous. That is something I think the Sharks have to truly avoid and lock down their defensive game within the first 5 to 10 minutes because, again, half of the 14 games, Las Vegas has put up a quick one that has San Jose playing from behind. I also feel, and this is without even looking up the stats, I've watched almost all of these Sharks and Las Vegas games in the last 2 seasons and the playoffs. I feel like the game outcomes play out like this. Either Las Vegas wins by a goal, or San Jose wins by a goal, or Las Vegas blows out San Jose. There has yet to be a game where the Sharks really just feed it to the Golden Knights. And look, the Sharks have posted wins against Las Vegas. They've had some success against the Golden Knights, but they've never just given them an old-fashioned beatdown. And there's something maybe mentally that, it's a mental block with that I struggle with. And maybe it feels like the matchup is more favoring Las Vegas when it may be truly not at all. But it just feels that way because the Sharks have never hammered that opponent from Nevada or one that at least stands out. And I feel like part of that really kind of gives you a flavor of this series already. By the way, it's going to be a physical series. I'm just talking about X's and O's here and the results that we might see. But after Las Vegas, let's assume that the Sharks get past round 1 against the Golden Knights. What might round 2 bring? Potentially, the Calgary Flames. That is also a very intimidating matchup, a group that has pretty much led the Pacific Division for a majority of the regular season. They've also led the Western Conference for a majority of the campaign. That's how they're going to finish in the standings. So that is definitely a formidable opponent. Also a group that's talented, young, and only getting better. They're hungry for this playoff opportunity. You know, the city of Calgary is going to be just crazy behind this team. So again, that's not going to be an easy one if that's what the Sharks were to face in round 2. Let me assume the Sharks get through that. Round 3 would bring Winnipeg, potentially. I'm just making this stuff up. Or let's say the Nashville Predators. Think about them as respective opponents. Not easy, right? And again, the Sharks have had some good games, really good games, against both those teams this season. I'm just showing you here that would potentially be what the Sharks might face in a Western Conference final. Like, think about this so far. Las Vegas, Calgary, Winnipeg, or Nashville. Heavy, 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 right? Let's say the Sharks get past the Western Conference final. They go back to the Stanley Cup final. Who do you think might be waiting for them on the other side? I'll cross off Boston for just a second. Full respect to the Bruins. I'm mentioning them here, but if I have to pick one, I mean, the Tampa Bay Lightning have just been ahead of everybody else by a mile this season. So I'm just going to pencil them in representing the East in the Stanley Cup final. So you've had to go through the Golden Knights, the Flames, Winnipeg or Nashville, and now you get the Bolts to try and win the Stanley Cup. My goodness. This is, and I'm plotting all this out that the Sharks get through it just to show you and to simulate what it would be like. This is not going to be easy. And I don't want to lead you on and have you think that they can't do it or that they won't do it. Play back the 2016 Stanley Cup Final. You may forget. It's easy to forget. The Sharks going into that playoff series, or into that playoff season, I should say, all they really wanted to do at first was get some revenge on the Kings, right? The Kings had reverse swept them 2 years prior. The Sharks were out of the playoffs the postseason before. All they wanted to do was avenge the Kings. They did that. Then they met the Preds, a very good Preds team, in round 2. That one went to 7 games. A lot of people forget that. Now, the Sharks hammered Nashville in that game 7, but what if San Jose didn't survive, right? Then they get to round 3. They got a little bit fortunate because the Blues in their prior series had gotten physically beat up, and San Jose kind of steamrolled through round 3 to get to a very difficult round 4 with Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So again, when I paint that prior picture of what the Sharks might face, that's just the nature of anybody who's going to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Final and represent the West. I'm just saying, look how difficult that picture looks from here. And then the last point I want to make is about the ending of this regular season and the beginning of a second season where everything starts from scratch. Mentally, it's hard to forget things. It's hard to forget what has been happening here in the last couple weeks or even at prior points in the season where this team really impressed you. But here's the way I want to say it. You have to know and you have to remember where this team has been. But you also have to know and you also have to remember that absolutely none of it matters when you are, in fact, starting from scratch. In more recent years than not, I mean, the Sharks have had their struggles in Marches, right? They just have. And there's been some years where they look good. They've won 9 of 13 in the month of March, and then it doesn't translate into some special postseason run that we all hoped for. They've also had pretty disastrous months of March that turned out to be good playoff runs, maybe more than you expected from that specific group. So it's the reminder that even if the Sharks were winning a bunch of games right now, here in March and into the beginning of April, a lot of that might be a false platform. And one example I have for you are the Anaheim Ducks, in fact, of last season. They won 10 of their last dozen in the regular season. They went on to get swept in 4 games in round 1 by the San Jose Sharks. I don't think that's common, but it happens. It just goes to show you they might have just flat out lost that series. Forget the sweep. Even if they lose in 5 or 6 games, they were red hot, winning 10 of 12 and then getting sent out of the postseason just like that. So I'm not here to say that losing a bunch of games is a good look going into the second season, but I'm also here to say that winning a bunch of games has proven it doesn't always guarantee you anything. Beyond wins and losses, again, coming full circle here on this video, I bring it back to the basics. It's just about confidence, a team feeling good about its game, and being healthy going into the second season, especially when you're like the Sharks. You already know where your seeding is, you already know who your opponent is, and you already know that you have home ice advantage. Hey, by the way, I want to tell you a little bit about social media. You can follow me on Twitter during Sharks and A's games. I'm a heavy user there. Also, the Gram, Instagram. I've been working hard on some really good content over there, so check me out. I've been doing it for the Gram. My podcast comes out a couple times a week. It's on iTunes, Google Play, as well as Spotify, and then right here on the YouTube channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if this is your thing. I really appreciate it. I hope you come back for more. Thanks for sticking around this long. And until next time, I'm Brody Brazil, and yes, that is my real name.